No, I think wait, Shubha.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay.
Please
Good
go ahead.
evening. Good evening, and a very warm welcome to the dignitaries, resource persons from across the globe, and each of the attendees. Greetings from the Department of Human Development, Faculty of Home Science of Srimati P.N. Doshi Women's College, Ghatkopar, given the title of High Performing Institute recognized by NAC, and we are affiliated to SNDT Women's University. We are conducting this webinar in association with Mukta, and the webinar is titled The Journey of Early Childhood Education 2020, Educators and Caregivers as Navigators of Change. A few pointers to ensure the smooth streaming of the proceedings. Please keep your microphones and videos off. Please post your questions to the resource persons in the chat box. A very earnest request that a feedback link will be provided at the end of the event. So please do not put any such requests in the chat box. I would now like to introduce the concept note of the international webinar. Research has shown that childhood is a vital period for brain development and has validated the crucial importance of quality early interaction between children and their immediate environment. Early experiences are critical and lay the foundation for human development, lifelong learning, and productivity. These experiences are also greatly influenced by the child's nutritional and health status, exposure to stimulation, and interaction with people, objects in his surroundings. Interventions to promote physical, intellectual, emotional development in the early years, particularly in times of stress, make a difference for young children and their caregivers, both immediately and over the long term. Early childhood development programs that focus on parenting, community based care centers, preschool, and early learning spaces in emergency situations can both provide can both support caregivers and ensure that quality care needed for children to survive and develop to their fullest potentials is ensured. Beyond the individual developmental impacts of pre-primary education, studies have shown that investment in ECE can result in broader social economic benefits. With increasing number of children attending the ECE centers, preschool centers across service providers and sectors, it calls for ensuring that provisions of the ECE programs and services, whether by government or private, meets the required standards and measures. The challenges are many. The status of ECE programs across the countries are varied. There are multiple strategies, different curriculum models, limits to access, both geographic and economic, variable quality in terms of lack of standards, definitions of ECD programs, facilities that are provided. There are health and safety concerns, human resources in terms of limited ECD workforce, and varying degree of priority given to ECD programs by respective governments, to mention a few. The COVID pandemic has resulted in monumental changes to education throughout the world. According to UNESCO 2020, nearly 90% of the world's student population, over 1.5 billion learners in 165 countries, have had their learning experiences disrupted by precautions and policies implemented to quell this disease. Early childhood development interventions in emergencies are specific actions which are taken to safeguard and uphold the rights of all children under 8 years of age. Owing to their developing capacities and their increased dependence on caregivers to meet their needs, young children are already a vulnerable group. In the context of emergencies, young children face several visible and invisible challenges. Children who experience extreme and adverse stress in their early years are at greater risk for developing cognitive, behavioral, and emotional difficulties, which also reduces and delays their overall developmental processes. The parents and caregivers are more likely to be stressed and depressed and thus less able to provide young children with positive and emotionally nurturing environments. To effectively address these issues, government, educators, organizations need to adequately plan and provide the resources to the pre-primary subsector. The international webinar today intends to deliberate on the status of ECE, challenges and practices to be implemented or already in place in 3 countries across the globe, that is Ireland, United States of America, and India. I would now like to hand over to Dr. Asha Menon, the principal of Srimati P.N. Doshi Women's College, to take this further.
Thank you, Dr. Shobha Bharat. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the international webinar on the journey of early childhood education 2020, educators and caregivers as navigators of change, organized by the Department of Human Development, SPN Doshi Women's College, Mumbai, and Mukta. Before we start, I would like to mention a few accomplishments of my college. Our institution is 60 years old. We have been recognized as one of the top performing institutes in the country by NAC in 2017. The vision of our institution is to educate, enlighten, and empower girls. Well qualified and dedicated teachers, excellent teaching and learning process, student support, good governance, leadership, and management have helped us achieve what we have today. All these have culminated not only in getting high grades in NAC, but also in fulfilling our vision to be recognized as a center of excellence for education that empowers women, leading to self-actualization. Coming to today's webinar, the country and society that invests wisely in its children and their families harvest the fruits of development. Nations around the world are becoming aware of the importance of early childhood education. Investing in the education of our children early on puts young minds on a promising path of lifelong learning and future success in the workplace and global economy at large. The National Education Policy 2020 has indicated an increased focus on the universalization of early childhood care and education. A national curriculum and pedagogical framework for early childhood care and education for children up to the age of 8 will be developed by NCERT and will aim for holistic development of learners, equipping them with the key 21st century skills, reduction in curricular content to enhance essential learning and critical thinking, greater focus on experiential learning. It has therefore become one of the most appreciated steps acknowledged univocally by everyone. Looking into the present scenario with schools across the globe closing, the uncertainty to the learners, students are learning to adapt to the online educational opportunities that government and schools are hurrying to deliver to meet the challenge. For millions of young children at the pre-primary level, however, sources of safety and comfort found in the familial routine and structure provided by planned activities at school are now drastically altered. COVID-19 has sparked an impetus for us to design intervention programs that can traverse platforms and geographies with ease, which means repurposing existing communication and rolling this out in innovative ways. As nature forces human action to a pause, it may well be giving us the biggest opportunity to create this world for our children. One of that frees us from outdated structures and let us reimagine and build what with a new clarity of intent. I'm sure this webinar will address these issues. I'm happy that we have eminent speakers from 3 different countries, Ireland, United States of America, and India, to deliberate on this topic. I would like to welcome the speakers for today's webinar, Dr. Meera Oak, Ms. Kamna Sheth, Mr. Raesh Wilson, and Professor Rita Sonawat, and I'm looking forward to hear from them. I would also like to welcome Dr. S. Kumdavali Madam, Director, SPRJK Trust, to this webinar. She's one of the strongest pillars supporting us and belongs to the Department of Human Development. Welcome, ma'am. I would like to welcome the vice principals and coordinators, teachers and participants. I'm told there are more than 500 participants from 21 states of India and a few participants from overseas too. We are happy to see such overwhelming response of the participants. Wishing this webinar the very best, and I congratulate Dr. Rekha Randhive, Dr. Shobha Bharat, and Dr. Ritu Bhatia for organizing this webinar. Thank you. Over to Dr. Shobha Bharat for further proceedings.
Thank you, Asha. I'm very privileged to introduce the speaker for the first session, that is Dr. Meera Oak. I'm really privileged because it was Dr. Meera Oak who has introduced the concept of preschool and early childhood education to me when I was in college 28 years ago. Dr. Meera Oak has a PhD in human development from Mumbai, India, and she was teaching in the MSc program at Nirmala Niketan College of Home Science, and she also is currently the program director in early childhood care and education for and lifelong learning at the National College of Ireland, Dublin. Sorry, she also lectures on other education programs. She is now with her husband and daughter in Ireland, and she's professionally connected to an organization in Pune, which is the Bharatiya Samaj Seva Kendra, which is a 40-year-old organization in Pune serving children and families at risk. Her interests and publications are in the topics of play, early childhood, adolescence, adoption environments, and well-being. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being here with us. We are waiting to hear you. Over to ma'am Meera Oak.
Thank you so much, Shobha, for that rather almost embarrassing introduction. It not only kind of helped me to see what my age is, and I didn't realize it's 28 years since I was teaching in college. But anyway, thank you very much. Thank you very much to the organizers. Particularly to P.N. Doshi College, as well as to Mukta for giving me this opportunity to reconnect really with early childhood educators in India. And I was really, very happy when Shobha asked that perhaps I could share some of my ideas. Now, there are a couple of things that I just want to, start off with. When Shobha asked me, what would you like to kind of do, or what would you like to, kind of share? And one of the things that, kind of struck me almost immediately was this whole changed environment because of COVID-19. And this is something that, as Shobha and Professor Menon just mentioned a short while ago, is something that is spanning the entire world. So it's not something that's unique to any, country. For once, the whole world is united with this one thing. It's unfortunate that it's a pandemic that has united us, but on the other hand, it's something that we need to think of. And because of this, all of us over here, we are on this platform because of this change, to be very honest. And so as I was thinking about what should I talk about today, I thought about reflective practice. And reflective practice in early childhood education, because that's the stage at which we should be really, be thinking about what is the purpose of the way we teach and how do we teach. And perhaps we might want to look at ways in which we might want to change the way in which we are teaching our young children because of this new approach. So we are online, we are using the internet. Are we still telling stories in the same fashion? Are we still teaching numbers in the same fashion? Are we still teaching colors in the same fashion? Perhaps we need to be a little more reflective about that. What I'm going to do now is to share a presentation and share my screen with you. And Shobha, if you don't mind, can you just remind me about the time, because I tend to kind of, when there are 5 minutes left, if you can just kind of
Yes, ma'am, I'll do that.
Put a thumbs up or something, or just remind me that will be really wonderful. Thank you.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Just 1 minute. Let me just share my screen. And share my screen with you. And Shobha, if you don't mind, can you just remind me about the time? Because can you see my screen?
Yes, very clear.
Great, thanks. Oh, sorry, that just went away. Okay. So here we go. Can you hear me?
Yes,
ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We can hear you.
Yeah, I just have it full screen. So here we are, the title Reflective Practice in Early Childhood Education and Care. So what I plan to do in this short 20 minutes is kind of provide you with an overview of what is reflection, why reflective practice, a couple of tools and strategies and skills required for reflective practice, and what's the role of reflective practice and change. So when we come to this whole thing about, sorry, I don't know what happened here. So if you look at a reflection, and if we kind of reflect on the word reflection, if you look at the definition of reflection, it's really basically a representation and viewed as a process of really becoming aware of our own perspective, which is shaped by one's own values, personal beliefs, experiences, and the funds of knowledge that we bring. So, for instance, if we are teaching young children, um, we might want to reflect on the way in which we're teaching our young children, or perhaps the kind of tools that we're teaching or using to teach young children, or even to kind of re-examine and revisit the ideas that we had about how we're teaching young children. Here's a little picture here. Now, when you see a picture, and perhaps if you're reflecting on this picture, you might want, you're kind of at this stage, we're processing it in different ways. Each one of us will bring to our understanding or meaning making of this picture based on our own backgrounds, based on our own experiences. So perhaps some of us, might think, looking at what has been constructed, think that this must be, perhaps
Uh,
not in this country, or
Excuse
it
me,
might
ma'am.
be.
Excuse
Yeah.
me, ma'am. Your PPT is not moving. We are still on
Oh,
the first slide.
oh, is
So,
it?
yes, ma'am.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay, so perhaps I'll
Now
use
you
this
next
phone.
go to the now
Okay.
you can go to the
Yeah.
picture, ma'am. We couldn't see the picture. Thank
Oh,
you.
okay. Here's the
Thank you.
picture. Can you see that?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Shobha.
Mm.
That's what's required, an interaction in online. Otherwise, you're just going on. You don't see your audience, and therefore you have no expression
Yes,
to
ma'am.
go by. We're all learning, and we're all moving to this different medium. So as I said, if you're looking at this picture, you're probably reflecting and making meaning of it, depending on what your experience has been so far and what you bring to this particular picture. And so you would probably say that, looking at what has been constructed on the sand, it's, you might say that it's perhaps not in this country, it must be in some other country. If you look at the child, you're perhaps thinking that this child obviously is looking at somebody on the side, and figuring out if it's okay, or maybe asking certain looking for affirmation, or whatever. So reflection is nothing but re-examining, re-looking, and making meaning of it. Here's another picture. So in this picture, there are two caregivers, educators, early childhood educators, who are in the background, and you can see this, little girl holding a broom in her hand, and looking up, perhaps looking at something which we don't know what she's looking at. So we're again reconstructing something that has happened in the past through an image. And a reflection is nothing but reconstructing something that has happened in the past and re-examining it from the point of view of making it into a learning experience, and more so a learning from an educator's perspective. Here's another picture. Now this picture not only shows you what there is, the content of the picture, but it's also got emotions that are attached, or emotional experience that you go through when you actually see this picture. So when you're experiencing something, it's a holistic experience. It's not only the content of what is happening, but it's also this link which Vygotsky explains very, very well in his concept of Perizavani, where he says that every single experience is so closely linked with not only the content, but also the emotional experience and the meaning making of that experience based on our own past experience. So it's a build-up, but it's both. Not only the physical description of it, but also the emotional experience of it. Now, what is educator reflection, and why should educators be reflecting? And more so, how is it different from simple everyday a reflection that we kind of do? So in an everyday reflection, what we're really doing is we're thinking, okay, and thinking and evaluating that thinking on the basis of an automated response of what the rules and regulations are or what tradition is, and we're viewing our experience or reflecting on that experience on the basis of an automated kind of a response. In an educational setting, what it really involves is deep, deliberate, careful, focused thinking of day-to-day teaching practice. It's very different from everyday thinking. And perhaps as early childhood educators or educators at any level, we need to be deliberately thinking about what we have done, how have we done it, why did we do it, did it achieve its objectives, and so on and so forth. It might seem like a simple feedback kind of a process, but reflective practice is much deeper than that. It's a deliberate, careful, and focused, conscious thinking about something that we would be doing on a day-to-day basis, and it gets much more complicated when it comes to teaching, because when you're teaching and when you're in the moment, you're actually thinking on your feet. You're making certain decisions. You're making those decisions of whether I should place myself in front of the children, or should I be sitting with the children in a circle? How should I be sitting? And or you might even change your position on a particular day depending on what happens on that particular day. So it's this is thinking in that action as well. And shortly we'll come to look at the types of reflection that we might have in early childhood settings or in any education setting. So as I said, it's different from everyday thinking. It involves making well-informed decisions based on the reflection, and it basically supports making professional judgments, sometimes on very, very little evidence. And if, as educators, we practice reflection, we'd be making those judgments and we'd be more experienced in making those judgments with very little evidence, because one becomes habituated, as it were, to reflect on everyday happenings. So we've got these different types of reflection. There's academic reflection, there's social efficacy reflection, developmental reflection, social reconstructionist reflection, and so on and so forth. I won't go into these. I'll send this across to Shobha if you want. You could share it with the participants in the group, because it's a short webinar and it's just an introduction, and therefore I don't want to go into deep, into a class about it, as it were. So why reflective practice? Why should you engage in reflective practice? And basically, it makes you a much more skillful and expert teacher. So a novice teacher would, would get into a reflection which is based on everyday kind of thinking, but a skillful expert teacher would engage in reflective practice on a day-to-day basis. Basically, it improves your professional competencies. It helps you to identify your own strengths and limitations as an educator, a very key thing in terms of yourself developing as a professional educator. While it may seem simple, a lot of early childhood educators in my practice over here of education find it very, very hard to engage in this autonomous activity. And so a part of our program, is hugely devoted to a reflective practice, because there's so much change going on the ground, and old theories, old knowledge may not fit into current circumstances. It's a dynamic situation, and so engaging with this process, being dialogical and rethinking about what we're doing on a regular basis, helps one to become more competent and identify strengths and weaknesses. So what
Participants, please mute your microphones. It's disturbing the session. Please. Sorry, ma'am.
No, it's not any problem because this happens all the time. We kind of expect it, to be honest. The people are living lives and they're also attending this session. So that's fine. That's absolutely no problem. It happens here as well. So no need to apologize, to be honest. So, what are the strategies and tools for reflective practice? Basically, critical thinking. That's the major tool here. You're kind of reflecting and figuring out whether what you did, how you did, what you did, how does it weigh up against perhaps theory, or perhaps our whole goals and objectives in early childhood education. So there are many models there, and as I said, it's not new. But on the other hand, the practice of it is something that we all need to engage in, and this is a cyclical process. So you're acting, you're doing something, you're asking a question, you're investigating, you're acknowledging what you bring to that reflection, and you're also evaluating, weighing up evidence to figure out what I did was okay, or do I need to change the way in which I told that story? How do I need to change the way in which I introduced that story, and so on and so forth. So you're valid, and you're again putting it into practice. So it's a cyclical um, process. So what can we use as evidence? Basically using these strategies, tools to understand ourselves, managing our responses to daily events. So it's becoming aware, becoming more conscious of what we're doing on the ground. With early childhood educators, with my experience in India as well as my experience in Ireland, tells me that by and large they're doing excellent work. They're doing very good work on the in actual practice. But what happens is they're very rarely able to say why they do what they do. And reflective practice is something that helps us to to explain why we're telling the story in this way, why we're not doing numbers in the formal way, why we singing the rhymes that are Western, in an Indian context, and so on and so forth. So we're questioning the assumptions that we have, and kind of rooting them. But we should be able to say, we know it intuitively, but it needs to be put forward in a in a reflective way, so that we're able to convince our parents and our the whole system that we work with in early childhood education. So basically, we have to be very aware that we are bringing our own values and experiences to the current situations, the expectations and learning styles. We have to remember that we probably have been educated in a particular way, and we've been brought up in a particular way with our own values and experiences. Perhaps we may value those who are very good at mathematics, okay, and we may value those who are excellent at telling stories, and so on and so forth. But you might want to reflect on whether the current situation um, is giving you, as an educator, an unbiased picture of what is really happening, and is it promoting learning. So what you're really doing is reflecting um, on actual practice. So people's past experiences, prior knowledge is actually which is known as funds of knowledge, is brought into your practice on an everyday basis. Every single educator brings this into practice. And basically, you're bringing in this funds of knowledge into practice on the basis of your own competence, your education, your experiences, and so on and so forth. Reflective practice helps you to rethink about those practices that you were used to, and are they any longer useful? So COVID-19 has changed the context now. Can we use the same techniques, pedagogical approaches that we were using in the past, but we've just changed the medium? Now, okay, now we're here on internet, but I'm going to use exactly the same practices because I've been used to that, in my past life and my prior experience. The purpose of reflective thinking is to rethink and re-examine, perhaps do some new learning, like we all are learning, learning to get onto different websites, learning, other kinds of tools like at Puzzle and, which was the other one, Quizlet, the other day I was looking at. So, it's like rethinking whether the same strategies are really going to work or not. And reflective practice is something that, enables that process. Finally, what I'd like to end with is really reflective practice kind of strengthens learning. It questions our existing practice and assumptions in particular, identifies our own values and the willingness to rethink these, searching for new ways of knowing and doing. Reflective practice is fundamental component to every educator's role. Every educator, it needs to be part of our curriculum, a part of our practice, and have that space in which we could dialogue about it. So this particular approach, reflective thinking, is not only useful in our workplace, but it's also useful in the way in which we relate with our colleagues, and it's our own thinking as well. The willingness to engage in kind of rethinking, re-examining, re-questioning, which is the basic of reflective thinking. So thank you very much. If you have any questions or any, kind of stuff that we can talk about, please post your questions in your chat box, which Shobha has already mentioned. And thank you very much again for giving me this opportunity to kind of share some of my ideas. If you want to know more about practice in Ireland, I think that was part of the process. When I heard your overview, it kind of mentioned that. Maybe if we have a little time at the end, I'll share what happens in Ireland in terms of early childhood education. Thank you.
Ma'am, I think we will have time at the end because we would be interested in knowing a little bit about what's happening. Thank you so much, ma'am, for that wonderful session. Your session highlighted the importance of reflective practices in the teaching learning process in order to become effective teachers. And it is also very, very important process that teachers need to undergo in order to ensure professional judgments. Thank you so much, ma'am. I will now hand over to Dr. Ritu Bhatia to introduce the speakers for the next session and begin with the next session too.
Thank you, Shobha. Now we have come to the next session of the webinar. The topic of the session is challenges and emerging trends in early childhood education field, a perspective from USA. Today we have speakers for this session from USA. We welcome Ms. Kamna Seth and Mr. Reese Wilson for just a brief introduction of both the speakers.
1 minute, Ritu, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Meera ma'am, you need to stop sharing.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure that out, to be honest.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. You have time because we need to introduce both the speakers. Thank you.
I'm just trying to reconnect this thing and it doesn't seem to show me that function.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a brief introduction.
So you're seeing this wonderful screen, I'm sure. Sorry. Yeah.
Just a brief introduction of both the speakers. The biodata of both the resource person is quite lengthy, but due to time restrictions, I'm just highlighting the significant point. First, I introduce Ms. Kamna Seth. Ms. Kamna Seth is at the Source for Learning organization at Virginia, where she holds for managing and supporting a team of early childhood staff, consultants, and to ensure the effective overall functioning and quality assurance of the early childhood services offered by her organization. Ms. Seth has a master's degree in the specialization of child development and family nutrition from Mumbai University, India. She also completed certificate courses from George Mason University. She is certified non-profit manager, head start mid manager, preschool observer, trainer, and child care professional. Ms. Seth has remarkable employment history. She started her career at Mumbai Mobile Crash India as a training and program coordinator. After moving to USA, she worked as lead teacher, assistant director, curriculum coordinator, assistant director, accreditation coordinator, quality assurance specialist at NAEYC before taking up responsibility as a senior director, EC initiative at SFL. With your vast experience in field, we are sure our students and other participants will be inspired to be a competent early childhood education professional. Welcome you, ma'am. Ms. Kamna Seth, we are happy to have you today for us. Now I come to the introduction of our second speaker, Mr. Reese Wilson. Mr. S. Wilson is an expert in the field of early childhood education. Mr. Wilson has completed his bachelor's and master's in education from Clarion University of Pennsylvania and a doctor of education in instruction and learning, University of Pittsburgh. Mr. S. Wilson is currently working as director of Dean's Leadership Team for Young Children's Program at James Madison, where he also holds a position of Associate Professor of Education. Mr. Wilson has an impressive long list of research work, publication, and research presentation, paper presentation to his credit. All the work has been done for the education of young children. Sir, by looking at the title of some of your research papers, I'm looking forward to read each of them for my knowledge update. Apart from teaching and research work, Mr. S. Wilson holds various positions at professional level as member of various committees, as a project director, grant administrator, and member of reputed organizations like National Association for Guidance of Young Children, International Play Association, to name the few, National Association for Multicultural Education, and many more. We are glad to have you, sir, with us today for this session. With this, I welcome both the speakers, Ms. Kamna Seth and Mr. S. Wilson, and I'm sure that with your knowledge and expertise in early childhood education in the field of ECE, our participants and we will be benefited. Thank you, both of you, to accepting our invitation, and I welcome you both. Now I hand over the session to Ms. Kamna Seth, and over to you, Kamna ma'am.
Right. I think I'm going to start. Thank you for having us here today. It's morning here in the United States. I'm really privileged to be able to present with Kamna. She and I have a long history of collaboration, and she's a wonderful person to work with. I also want to thank Dr. Oak for her presentation. Very interesting and very timely and relevant. And I also have a connection with Ireland. I take a group of university students to Northern Ireland and Ireland every May for a month, and they complete practicum experiences in Northern Irish and Irish schools. So I'd like to connect with her later and talk more about that. Again, thanks for having us here. Our presentation today is Challenges and Emerging Trends in the Early Childhood Education Field, a perspective from the USA. And we are going to start talking about some broader challenges in our field at the moment, and then we'll get into specifics related to the COVID-19 situation. You've already introduced us. You did a great job. So I think we'll go to the next slide, and Kamna will help us with that.
Well, thank you, Reese. So Dr. Wilson and I are certainly, we are very appreciative that we were invited to speak at this session. And it's so wonderful to be with our esteemed colleagues and peers in the field, knowing that there are so many dedicated folks around the world trying to make a difference for young children and their families that they serve in the field of early childhood education. So it's certainly an honor, and thank you, Shobha, for reaching out to me. So with that said, what our goal is perhaps is first to kind of go over some of the bigger challenges that we have faced in United States. And these have been some of the ongoing challenges that we have encountered. And now that we are facing the current pandemic situation, certainly that adds to already existing challenges. So our goal here is to kind of highlight some of the challenges that we have been facing, and then kind of focus on what are more specific challenges pertaining to the COVID-19 situation. So right now I'll start with some of the broader challenges. And one other thing that I would like to also mention is basically a disclaimer that both Reese and I, we are in the field of early childhood education and in different capacities. And we do keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening in the United States and around the world. But again, with our own jobs, it's very difficult to kind of know every single thing that is happening. And so these are just, again, United States is a very big country. There are a lot of things happening at the state level, at the county level. So we are not likely to know every single new thing that's happening in the United States. So I wanted to just point that out. So what you're going to be seeing here in this slide show is basically going to be something that we thought is critical for us to share with you folks. So one of the things that I want to mention, and I'm going to keep an eye on the time as well, because we only have certain amount of time. So one of the things that I wanted to mention is, here in United States, the field of early childhood education is very fragmented. So we have childcare programs, and they are center-based, or they are family programs in somebody's home. We also have preschool programs, which may be half-day preschools, full-day preschools, programs that are associated with some kind of faith-based institution. So it could be a church program, a synagogue program. Then we also have programs that are as part of the school district. So some could be for teenage families. So it could be actually the teenagers who have children, and there is a program to support them so that they can pursue their education. And then we have a special needs program, which is part of the school district. So there are many, many different types of programs, and not to mention then there are Montessori programs and other programs that follow a very specific type of early childhood curriculum. And everybody says, oh, we are not what the other one is, but it's all early childhood education ultimately. So it's a very fragmented field, and we do sense that when we are talking to individuals from different types of programs. The other is the lack of competencies for early childhood educators. So what is really a competency? Competencies are basically specific qualifications or qualities to do a very specific job. So I may have a degree in early childhood education or child development. My colleague Reese may have a degree in early childhood education, child development, but we don't know what I am really good at or what Reese is really good at. So if I am in the field, I could be doing the same job as Reese is doing. And only when we do that job, we realize, or somebody else may realize, this person is really not quite fit to work with toddlers. This person is really not really a person to work with preschoolers. We don't know that because there are no set of competencies. There's nothing to tell us that what really can you do, just like a doctor. I mean, a doctor cannot do everything. You have a pediatrician, you have an internist, you have a general physician. They have their own specific roles. So they have competencies. We know that if we go to this doctor, this is what they're going to do. Or if we go to a surgeon, the surgeon knows how to do a surgery. While here in early childhood education, it seems like, you just have a degree and then you can just about do anything. And so we lack those competencies. The other is the lack of universal standards for early learning programs. So here we have each state has come up with their own standards. So these are, you could consider them as developmental milestones, which have been established by the American Academy of Pediatrics, but the standards are more so, they are now connected with they may have some sort of curriculum guidance provided to educators as well. But again, there is a lot of discrepancy. Each state has come up with their own set of standards. So a child living in, let's say in Virginia, moves to California, all of a sudden the expectations are different. And that shouldn't be the case because that child is still the same. They are going through the same stages of development. And so there is this issue here about not having universal standards. The only set of universal standards is the Head Start standards. And what is Head Start? I will talk about that in one of the next slides, but I just wanted to mention there is this issue in United States that we do face. I will let Reese talk about the last item on the slide.
One of the biggest challenges we face in early childhood education in the United States, and I think probably around the world, and I'd be interested to hear your perspective from India, is funding for quality early care and learning programs. Most programs in the United States are private, and they're funded from parents and families. And when that's the situation, families can only afford to pay so much for childcare, and that keeps wages low for childcare teachers / workers. And that leads to the issue of lots of teacher turnover, staff turnover. Many teachers in early childhood in the United States have to take advantage of our social programs, such as help with food, because their wages are so low. It's really a terrible problem that we have. The highest quality programs in the United States tend to be programs that are related to universities or public schools, because they can pay their teachers fair wages, because they're supported by taxpayer money, whereas private schools are not. Now, that's not always the case. There are lots of private preschools that are really high quality, but low wages are an issue.
Sorry, this is my it's my slide here. So one of the really exciting things that is happening. So now we did talk about some of the bigger challenges that we face here in United States, but there is also something very exciting happening in United States, which we wanted to share. So the emerging trends, one of the things, the big thing, and maybe some of you may be aware of this, is the NAEYC-led Power to the Profession initiative. So this is the initiative that will take the early childhood education field from an occupation to being a profession. Right now, we just say or call ourselves professional. We are really not professionals, not as a profession. That's what is happening right now, because it's an occupation again, because there are no competencies. Nobody can tell us, oh, this is what I am really competent to do. So we are looking at the set of competencies. NAEYC has really taken the lead on this. And let me give you a little bit of the history, how this came about. So in 2015, the National Academy of Medicine here in the United States, they released a report which highlighted the urgent and important need for a collective effort to address the fragmented early childhood education workforce. So as I was telling you earlier, that it is a very fragmented field. So there was this did come out in the report that this needs to be taken care of. And in response to that report, this Power to Profession initiative, which is also known as P2P initiative, was established as a national collaboration to define early childhood profession, what that would really look like. So as part of that, NAEYC, and there are actually 15 other organizations that are part of this initiative here in the United States, and they're all working towards developing career pathways, developing competencies that would be universal, standards for children, qualifications. So not just somebody having a bachelor's degree or a master's degree would make them qualified to work with young children. They need to go through a certain set of competencies to ensure they actually have the skills to work with infants, toddlers, preschoolers, older kids. So we are very excited about that. As part of this whole thing, what came about was that we all have this credential here, which is called the CDA credential, which is a Child Development Associate credential. So many folks who would get in the field, they would kind of go and get this credential. And now as part of this whole Power to Profession initiative, this has kind of come up as more like a baseline credential. So if somebody were to be working in the field, no matter what they have, if they don't have a degree in early childhood education or child development, this would be a base credential that people would need to have in the field. Again, right now, this is not a mandate, it's not a requirement, but this is where we are headed, that this could be a baseline throughout the United States. So CDA, which is a Child Development Associate credential, is offered by Council for Professional Recognition, which is actually located right here in my area, which is Washington, DC. Besides that, we also now have seen a bump in federal grants and funding offered by some of the administration. Right now, it's not happening as much, but we were very, very pleased with the Obama administration. I mean, they did put a lot of money in there. So Child Care and Development Block Grant was has existed for many years now. That is again primarily for children from lower socioeconomic levels. We also have Head Start, which again, that funding is again for families and children from underprivileged backgrounds. Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge Grant. This did pump in a lot of money in the states for early childhood education, and it was really wonderful. And a lot of this funding was also tied to the professional development of educators, which doesn't happen a lot of times, because a lot of times the money comes in and it is directly tied to children and families. So this was really tied to professional development as well. So we were very excited about that. And we really hope to see, where things go and what other kind of grants and funds that may come through. There are several other smaller grants and fundings, but these are some of the big ones that I wanted to highlight.
And Kamna just talked about federal initiatives. This next slide begins with the idea of state subsidies and fundings, different initiatives to fund preschool. In Virginia, we have something called the Virginia Preschool Initiative, which provides money from the state of Virginia, the government, to local school divisions to create new spaces for underserved children. We started off with 4-year-old children. So these are families that typically wouldn't be able to afford quality early childhood education. So the government, the state government of Virginia, through this VPI initiative, gives them funds and they enroll them in this preschool program. They also take, the public schools also partner with private childcare centers, one of which I'm the director of. Well, it's public, but we accept and take children from the public through this Virginia Preschool Initiative. And as I said, it's geared toward 4-year-olds, but in the new grant that we've just written and hope to hear about very soon, we've also included 3-year-olds in this. So the hope is that we have the children when they're 3 years old, and then they can move on the next year, and we can see what kind of growth occurs having the children begin when they're 3 rather than 4. Another initiative we're really excited about are scholarships and subsidies offered at the state level by affiliates of NAEYC. So we have the Virginia Association for the Education of Young Children in Virginia, as well as the Northern Virginia Association for the Education of Young Children. And that's near the DC area. And then VACE, or the Virginia Association for the Education of Young Children, covers the rest of the state of Virginia. And some of these initiatives and scholarships offer money for practitioners to go back to school, to get more education, scholarships for directors to get specialized training, such as a director's credential through COMNA's organization, Source for Learning, and money for childcare programs to work toward NAEYC accreditation for their program, because there is a fee for programs to be accredited by NAEYC. So those are some ways that at the state level that VACE and Northern Virginia VACE are working to help practitioners and programs. We also have some programs at the higher ed level, which is really exciting. So I work for James Madison University, that's where I teach. And we, the state of Virginia has a program where practitioners can earn their associate's degree at a community college, so near where they live. They don't have to travel far. And the cost is much lower than a traditional four-year institution. And then after they earn this associate's degree, the practitioners can enroll in, that's a 2-year program, then they can enroll in the BIS program, which is a bachelor's program that when they are done, they will have the credential to teach pre-K through 3rd grade in Virginia. And this program, once they get to the 4-year university, it's 2 more years, and it's all online. So they can keep working and earn their degree at the same time. The only time they might have to take some time off is for the student teaching part of the program at the very end. But even then, we're working with these teachers to do most of that where they work. So they can keep working, support their families, and earn their bachelor's degree at the same time. So we're really excited about that. Kamna?
I think this is your slide, right, Reese?
You are right. So this challenges due to COVID really has hit me, as I've just taken over the role of the director at our university early care and learning laboratory school. So I'm getting all of this every day, thinking about all of these things. At the top of the list is, right now we're going back to school in person, but that could change at any time. In March of last year, our university went totally online and we never came back face to face. We come back next week and we'll see how that works. But when we were not meeting face to face, the lab school for the young children did use online instruction with the young learners and their families. It went well, but part of that is because our families, a lot of them are related to the university. They have the resources to have high-speed internet and a computer, a laptop, or a tablet to complete this online learning. Many families don't have that. A lot of our country, there's not high-speed internet, and a lot of families don't have the resources to have a computer or a laptop or a tablet. So that's a real issue. Lack of teachers not being computer savvy. We're all learning. Many of us are learning on the fly, right? I never really participated in webinars or online instruction with colleagues until the COVID-19 pandemic started. So it's new to many of us, and that's something we're all learning to live with. Impact on social, emotional, and language development. You know, when you can't be face-to-face with families and children, that's really difficult. So we have to work on those sorts of things. And I did make a list of some other challenges we're facing. Because of COVID, we can't have full enrollment in our early childhood programs. For example, my program, we can only have 10 children in a classroom where we used to have 20. And that's the same for many early care and learning programs. So half of the children means half of the tuition. So our budgets have been cut in half. It's a very real struggle for most childcare programs. We are fortunate to be part of a university and they're helping us with that piece, but many programs don't have that support. The state of Virginia is offering some grants to childcare programs. They're called CARES grants that are helping with this, but that's a real issue. Teachers leaving. Personally, I had several teachers from our program resign in the past few weeks because they are not comfortable teaching and they're afraid of COVID-19. So keeping teachers and staff is an issue. I am personally experiencing that. So I have to hire new teachers here in the next few weeks. Extra costs for programs. Now we need supplies for cleaning, for personal protection. Those are all very expensive and an added cost. And cleaning. When is cleaning going to happen? Are you going to pay staff extra to stay and do that work because that's all going to take a lot of time? Are you going to hire people to do the extra cleaning? And that is a drain on budgets. So many challenges associated with COVID-19 and the current pandemic. Kamna?
Thank you, Reese. I think we are almost done with our time, but I wanted to quickly highlight the resource page, particularly for those of the attendees who may be teachers. And some of the content may not be very relevant to folks in India, but I think you can certainly utilize many of these resources because they are pretty universal. What at the Source for Learning, what we did was my team, we put together a lot of resources together. Some it may not be relevant for you all in India, but there are quite a few resources that I'm pretty sure that you could be able to utilize. We have a set of resources for educators and for early learning programs on this page. And some of the documents I'll probably mention real quick so that you know what we have here. We do have, and again, these are at no cost. You can just come to the website, you can just pull up the PDF, you can save it on your desktop. So we have compiled a list of resources, web links, that are providing some additional resource materials, or it could be guidance to teachers. So instead of you all going on the website and doing your own research, we have actually compiled a document with all the web links. So, don't spend your time doing that because we know how busy you are actually doing curricular planning, lesson plan planning. So here, utilize these links and documents to get to those websites quickly. We also have a PDF, it's in a PDF format, but it's a document about coping with stress, COVID-19. I mean, it has caused a lot of stress, particularly if you're now trying to utilize some different and new strategies and approaches, you are going to be stressful and you do need to take care of yourself. So we want to make sure, so we have put a document together about how you can cope with stress. And also we do a lot of webinars which are offered at no cost. So when you come to our website, explore our webinar archives, because again, we have done some webinars related to stress as well for early childhood educators. So you may want to watch that, those archived webinars. And then there's, and one of the things is, again, when you are in this kind of situation, you still would want to do a lot of reading to the children. So we have a document here on our webpage, the importance of reading during difficult time, and then some tips and guidance on reading to the children. There are also some resources. So part of this page also has some resources for families. So if you're a teacher and you want to share some kind of resources with your families, feel free to either send the link of this page or the link to the PDF directly to your families. Because again, the document we compiled for families, because we were hearing over here in US where people were trying to say, okay, I have my child at home and teachers only log in for such a short time. What do I do after that? So we actually compiled, it's a 13-page document with lots of web links and lots of information. So you may want to check that out. And then we also have some very simple, basic activities that families can do with their children at home. So right now we have about, I believe, 18 activities, and we are likely to keep posting some new activities ongoing. So you may want to check that out, and again, forward that to your families as well. So that's it from us. Thank you very much. And the link is right here on the screen, and I did send the handout, of the slide deck to Shobha. So Shobha, if you want me to resend it to you, that's fine. You can share this with the attendees.
I've got the resources. Kamna, I'll be forwarding all the resources on the Telegram link.
Great.
So yes, I will be doing that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ritu?
Yes. Yes, Shobha.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kamna, and Ms. Dr. Reese Wilson for the wonderful sharing about not only the current situation in USA, the challenges that you face. Listening to some of the things that you were saying, we are wondering we are a developing country and we face almost similar challenges. Dr. Rita Sonawat will be highlighting the different issues that are happening in India, and they are closer home, so I'm sure we will be able to identify. But yes, we are listening. We did hear a lot of issues that are very, very similar to what we are facing here. I would also like to thank you very much for sharing the resources. I'm sure all our participants will find it a huge sense of some kind of wonderful treasure that they can access, and also they'll be passing it on to parents who are again facing a lot of challenges while they're doing activities at home with their children.
We hope so too. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reese, and thank you, Kamna, very much. Ritu will take over. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Reese and Ms. Kamna. And I'm sure that with your wonderful speech and with your perspective which you have given from the USA, our participants and all of us will be benefited. And actually, we come to know that, the developed country is also facing some of the problems which we are facing over here, like lack of computers or lack of teachers' efficiency to handle the this ICT, and the parents' problems, the financial constraint. It's surprising to know this. And we are very thankful to both of you, both the speakers, for your wonderful session. Now I invite Dr. Shobha Bharat to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Rita Sonawat, ma'am.
Thank you, Ritu. I take great pleasure in introducing Dr. Rita Sonawat. Today is a wonderful day for me. On one hand, I introduced Dr. Meera O, who was my mentor during my master's, and now I have the privilege to introduce Dr. Rita Sonawat, who was my PhD guide and mentor. She is a very, very eminent person, and her resume runs into pages. But right now, she is holding the position as a director, early childhood education in Ampersand Group, Mumbai. She is also the former dean of the Faculty of Home Science at SNDT Women's University, and she was the head of the department and professor at the Department of Human Development, SNDT Women's University. She was selected as a global leader in early childhood care and education by the World Forum Foundation, Washington, in the conference held at Montreal in 2005. Last 9 years, she has been holding the position of an executive director in Early Childhood Association, which is a very well-known organization in the field of early childhood education. She has been an international volunteer leadership program in early childhood education. She was invited by the US State Department Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs at Washington, D.C., where she discussed an overview of the US education system and federal leadership. She has done her postdoctoral research in integrated education in kindergartens and primary school in Bremen University, Germany. She has undergone a course in Haifa at Mount Carmel, Golda Meir Mount Carmel Institute on early childhood education with reading difficulties. She is a recipient of National Award for Teacher Trainer in Innovative Training for the project on improving classroom environment towards quality in early childhood education. She has a number of PhD students who have completed their PhD under her, and she has been invited to present papers in Athens, Brasilia, Montreal, Jogja, Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur, Reggio Emilia, London, Belfast, and the list just goes on. Her special areas and where she has published books are language development, creativity, music and movement, science for preschool children, understanding children's right to learning, participation and development. Her special core area is also multiple intelligences for young children and instilling emotional intelligence among children. She's a very, very strong spokesperson for child rights. And she also has created a project on nature education and written a book on nature education. She has written more than 100 articles in reputed journals. Ma'am, it's a privilege and a pride to have you here amongst us. Ma'am, over to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Shobha. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, all the participants, all the panelists. And I would like to really thank you, Shobha, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to be with 500 participants. So it's a lot of credit goes to you and your department and your team. It's a wonderful job you people are doing. So today I'll be mostly speaking on implementation of national education policy and how the policy is so strong and what are the challenges and difficulties we will be facing when we will be implementing the policy. So it's a definitely for us, it's a pride moment, I can say, as a country, because after 34 years, the national education policy has finally seen the light of the day. The government and the committee needs to be congratulated for hard work that gone into the ensuring that the vision of millions of Indian educators, researchers, policymakers in the develop for enhancing education in India. So basically, I'll be focusing on early childhood education program, which is part of the policy. But still, I would like to say this National Education Policy 2020 is very progressive. It is looking forward. It is a vibrant, which is fulfilling the imagination of the young and our young and aspirational nation. The policy is to provide learning the opportunity to develop conceptual understanding of the subjects. So this is the first time in the policy itself it is written that in early childhood education we will not be talking about the rote learning at all, because policy is focusing on mother tongue so children can conceptually understand what is happening in the classroom. For example, I always like to say many of the children, they used to recite rhymes like London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. So children were not understanding what is London, what is bridge, what is falling down means, and what is the meaning of My Fair Lady. So when they were not understanding, they were just reciting, they were memorizing. So they were not knowing what is exactly the conceptual understanding of the rhyme. But this policy is saying that the education should be given in such a way where children, they understand the subjects, and there is a continuous assessment of the children. So to implement this kind of policy, we need to train our staff members, like very clearly our first speaker has talked about reflective practices. We need to train our staff members how to do continuous assessment of the children. So that has become a very, very important area, we can say, of the policy. Policy makers understood very clearly that 85% of the child's cumulative brain development occurs prior to the age of 6. So I have given a lot of emphasis on the cumulative brain development, because we need to understand in the prenatal 0 to 3, 3 to 6, and 6 to 8, all the stages, this total brain development takes place, that is 85%. So to implement this kind of policy, it's very important that we need to have a strong investment in early childhood education. And for this investment, what we can see is even the policy is stating that we need to spend major percentage of the GDP in an early years program, that is the foundation years. Then if you see 86, we have a policy. That policy was also talking about quality education, but this policy is going at par with a sustainable developmental goal. And when we say SGD is kept in mind, so this policy is giving importance to 2030, that year. And before 2030, it wants that the implementation should take place on all children should be school ready. So it's not a class of children or a rural area, urban area, even the tribal areas also considered in this policy, and all children should be ready to go to the school. ECCE is seen as a very flexible, multifaceted, multi-level, play-based and activity-based and ban, the policy is talking about inquiry-based learning. And then after giving all these approaches, then the policy is even talking about the curriculum also. So what should be in a curriculum? So spelled out everything, especially in the language and language and numeracy. These are the two areas the policy has focused, and it has given the responsibility to NCERT that NCERT will develop national curricular and pedagogical framework for early childhood care and education. And there the mandate is given to NCERT that they will be developing 0 to 3 and 3 to 6 years. So, so we now will have our national framework ready with us. So all states, like our USA partner panelist has very clearly said that all states are doing their own. So India also has education as a state subject. But when our framework will be ready, that will be the central framework, and this framework will be followed by all the state government for the implementation. So there will be a seamless similarity will be taken in all the states. So that kind of implementation the policy is talking about. Now, what is the aim of this policy? So aim is very simple, where developmental domains are taken care, but with that competency-based education, which will be giving definitely learning objectives as well as learning outcomes also. So now the lesson plans will not be just making learning objectives, but lesson plan will be giving the learning outcomes. And through these outcomes, we will be understanding what is the status of language, literacy, and numeracy. Because you will be seeing all the time the focus has gone in early years in these two areas. Now we will be seeing what is the goal of the policy. The goal is ensuring that high quality ECCE across the country in a phased manner. So it is giving time to the state, it is giving time to the even ICDS program, that those who are coming from other countries, like you have a Head Start program. Similarly, in India, we have a ICDS program. And this is a flagship program of Government of India. It's on paper, it's one of the best programs, I can say, in the world. So it's so beautifully planned. So this Anganwadi centers will be strengthened with a high quality infrastructure, play equipment, well-trained Anganwadi workers. So here it is talking about even the quality of Anganwadi workers should also be little higher, and they should be getting continuous professional development program time to time. So that way, the goal is focusing on the socio-economically disadvantaged children should also be at par with other children when it comes to the quality program. Now, understanding the poverty is in India, we know that midday meal or meal is very important for children. So for this, the policy has extended the midday meal program from preschool to the primary school. And for that, they had a separate budgetary allocation for the midday meal program. Now I'm coming to my very dear project of the teacher training. So for we had a teacher training program, which was 1 year after the graduation. Now, after that, the NCTE, National Council for Teacher Education, came into the picture, and they have said we need to have a teacher education program, which is after 12th for 2 years. But interestingly, this our national education policy is has kept itself mum when it comes to the teacher training program. So it is talking about CPD, continuous professional development. And this continuous professional development has the accountability for the promotion of the teachers. That also they are saying. But it should be like 1 year, 2 year, that is not mentioned. So there is a definite gap I can see. For the educational qualification, I will like to say at least minimum 1 year is required, where the focus should be like super specialization should be on the literacy and numeracy. Then only we can reach to the goal which our policy is stating by 2030. So unless we have this super specialization and teacher is thorough how to reach out with the readiness program when it comes to the literacy and the numeracy, and then only we can be, it is possible for us to reach. Now we are talking about like COVID situation, where how when this kind of emergencies are there, then how the teacher training will be held. Here I would like to give you the example of this Ampersand group. They have recently organized teacher training program in Jammu and Kashmir separately. So 51 teachers were from Jammu and 41 teachers from the Kashmir. And everybody knows these are the very sensitive areas. And because of the sensitive areas, when our counterpart, those who spoke for USA and talked about our what kind of network they had here in Jammu and Kashmir, because of the sensitivity of the state, the network is only 2G. And in this 2G network, we have given online training to these teachers, as well as we have given online platform where they have done self-study. So the commitment of the teacher, I can say here, because the 2G was there, the network was very poor. So they were working 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, because that is the time they got the best network. So because they got the best network, so they did their online training by themselves. So that was a blended approach where face-to-face also we have given, and online we have given some platform to them where the material was there, and with that the assessment also was there. So this kind of professional development we are thinking the country need, and I'm sure the policy is talking about PPP model, where the public-private partnership is encouraged, and many of the, like Tata has very good online. Now Baiju has also came with their material on preschool. So lot many of these industries will like to hold hands, and they will come with their models when it comes to the PPP model. So this is very interesting thing which might happen, and COVID has brought it. And overnight, our teachers, they started giving online training to the teachers. So that is also one area where we can see there are gaps. I'm aware of those gaps, but still, at least learner and learning has not stopped. So that is a positive side. Now, the next part of the policy is again very interesting, where the ashram shala, that is the schools which are in the tribal area, which are in the remote places, maybe in some of the mountains, some of the very rural interior areas, where they had always education from first standard onwards. Now this policy is saying even those tribal area schools also should have preschools in that areas with the ashram schools. So if they will start preschools, it is very difficult to get teachers. So we need to really empower our teacher training program, where we can reach out to majority of the tribal teachers and empower them to become a great teachers. So this kind of integration the government is planning. Even the Anganwadis are also planned to be integrated with the municipal schools, or maybe with the government school. Even those who are isolated stand-alone school are also, they need to integrate with the school, because for seamless transition from the preschool to school. And this seamless transition is very important, and we need to have upward approach from pre-primary to primary. So that is only possible if there is a integration between the pre-primary and a primary school. That's the reason foundation years are first 5 years, 3 years from pre-primary and 2 years from primary. So this kind of program we had. Now the government is planning to have a foundation for the literacy and numeracy also. And this foundation will be working very hard to achieve the universal foundational literacy numeracy in primary school by 2025. So this, I can say, it is very hard to achieve, because we are already in 20 and 21. I don't know when the COVID and how the COVID will take place, but still this is the plan. By 2025 they want to achieve, and for that national mission on foundational literacy and numeracy is set up by the Ministry of HRD. So the ministries are working. When the draft was there, that time onwards ministry have started working for the implementation of the policy. The state will prepare their implementation plan very soon. The policy is talking about very interesting thing, that wherever the disadvantaged children are there, those socio-economically disadvantaged area, there the ratio should be 25:1. But other school can have the ratio 30:1. That is what is the ratio was talked about, pupil-teacher ratio. So that is not acceptable to many of us, those who are hardcore early childhood educator. They always fought for this ratio, but reality is we are a highly populated country. The number of preschool children is very high. Apart from this, the policy is planning to have a repository, which our Kamna has talked about, resources which are easily available for everybody. So we are planning Indian resources. So national repository will be prepared, and it will have high quality resources in the area of literacy and numeracy. So this will be called as a digital infrastructure for a knowledge sharing. And here the technological interventions will be there, which will be very indigenous. Best practices will be uploaded, and these kind of best practices from there they can take and apply in the preschool. So this kind of repository which the government is planning, and it will be online and it will be easy for the teachers to download. So that is also in the plan. Then we are talking about the each school should have a library, and this national book promotion policy, which is taught in the policy, and this library will not be for the school children only. This library will be available, accessible, have a quality program, and promoting readership in children for all the geographical locations in all the languages. So our country has our country is a huge country with a multicultural and a multilingual program we have. So all the languages we want to restore. So libraries will have books available for various languages. So that is also plan of the country. And the last thing which I would like to say, I have 1 more minute in my account. So that is somehow the policy wants to curtail the dropout rate. And for that, they are employing qualified teachers, qualified social workers in the school system. So they will be seeing those children, those who are not part of the school, bringing them as a part of the school. And those children who are leaving the school, why they are leaving the school, they will be making the home visit, tracking the child. And this tracking will be done till the child is in school. So any child should not be dropped out. With that mission, the policy is working. So I can say the dropout rate will go down, and not with the social worker. Here they are employing even the mental health professionals also. So they will understand if child is abused, maybe physical abuse, sexual abuse. So that can be one of the reasons for children not to be interested in academics, getting hard. So these mental health professionals will work with the children and solve the problems of the children, so they can be comfortably coming to the school. So the idea of this policy is to have all children, at least they should be reaching out to the 12th standard very easily and comfortably. So that is what was I thought of. So this policy is talking about how easy we can implement all the program in a preschool sector. So thank you so much, Shobha. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that wonderful insights into our national policy, which was introduced in 2020. Especially the insights that you gave on what is happening or what are the things that are planned in order to spread and emphasize on early childhood education. You also spoke about the problems that will be there in the implementation. And one of the things that you emphasized is that there is no clear picture about teacher education, which very much matches what Kamna said, that there also they don't have any particular competencies that are listed out. I think in the implementation part, since you have been a participant in preparing the national policy of education, I'm sure you're also going to be very active in the implementation part. So we look towards you with a lot of hope to make early childhood education a boon and a blessing for the children of our country. Your special emphasis also on the need to provide appropriate teacher education is highly appreciated and supported amongst the participants. Thank you very much, ma'am, once again for joining us on this webinar.
Thank you, Shobha. Thank you very much for inviting me.
We will now, thank you, ma'am. We will now move on to the question answer session. We would like to take the questions which the participants have posed to us on the Telegram group and on the chat of YouTube. So I will be just talking about what are the questions, and I will also mention which of the resource people, they would like the answers from which of the resource people. So if all the resource people could please put on their video, that would be helpful. If it is possible, Kamna and Dr. Wilson, Meera ma'am. So one of the questions for Meera ma'am is suggestions for educators and teachers to incorporate in the teaching learning process once we resume classes in person post COVID-19. We are all waiting, I suppose, to reopen.
Yeah, I think post COVID-19, we would again be face to face, but there are several tools that we could use for reflective practice, and particularly if we can link it very closely with the placement part of our program. So every teacher education program needs to have a placement component, and that placement component needs to be closely linked with the theory subjects. So just to give you an example, we just went through a whole revalidation of an undergraduate program, which is for early childhood educators. And just as the other speakers were talking about, what is the background of early childhood educators. And we too in Ireland at the moment have qualifications which are of varied levels. And so, this revalidation is a process that the country is going through to standardize the kind of training that's available for early childhood educators. So there is an expectation that by 2028, we would have a workforce that has a 4-year degree training in early childhood education and care. In short, to just give you an answer to your question, the basic thing is to be integrated into the placement training, to have reflective practice as part of the portfolio that we would have for training early childhood educators. And I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much, ma'am. A question for Kamna and Dr. Wilson. Is your county ready to reopen ECE centers? Please let us know about your country's preparedness to deal with COVID-19.
Yes, so we definitely are opening our early childhood programs. Many are already open and have been open the entire time with lowered enrollment to promote social distancing. I know personally from our program, we were supposed to open next week, but we're going to wait until September 21st to see what happens at the university. Because I personally have a feeling that we will go to all online by the end of September, but we'll see what happens. And many programs are having children and teachers wear masks. We are at our program. Our youngest children are 3, so they're wearing masks. They will be wearing masks. So we've talked to families about that. We've sent them resources about how to practice wearing masks and talk about what it will be like when we go back to school. There's a real nice little video I found online. It's a children's story about wearing masks. So those are some of the things we're thinking about, and having families visit the school, because a lot of them haven't been there since March. So we're having one-on-one visits with teachers and families before school starts.
Yeah, and I would also like to point out that here, we have the federal, which is the Center for Disease Control. So they have provided programs with extensive guidelines, and also each of the state Department of Health, they have provided extensive guidelines specifically for early childhood programs. So that's what has kind of prepared them a bit. And then of course, each program makes their own decisions, but they do have to factor those guidelines and put those in, into their own protocols.
Thank you, Kamna and Dr. Wilson. Rita, Dr. Sonawat, this is for you. How do we preserve indigenous practices related to ECCE in India?
That is what I said. The country has now decided to have a repository. And in this repository, all our good practices, best practices will be online available, and it will be stored there. And those who want to use it, they will be download, and it will be online. So there will be no issue. Maybe the practice is from Uttarakhand or maybe from Kerala. It is available to everybody from the nation. So indigenous practices will definitely have a place in a repository. And we all know some of the good practices which we want to preserve. So policy has really taken a good decision to give us a Diksha, that is a digital infrastructure for knowledge sharing.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. There is one more addition to that. Will resources in the repository cover teaching children with disabilities also? Yeah,
this is one thing I can say. Earlier policies have not touched that much, but this policy has touched children with special needs in good amount of pages they have given. And second is this policy is talking even of gifted children also. So it's not like disability only. We are talking about the policy is talking about the gifted children also. So this repository will have practices for the disabilities also.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, this is a question to all the resource people. Please, we would like your feedback. And this is a question that has been asked by many participants. How do we ensure that teachers remain motivated in the face of no recognition for their work and low wages? So it would be nice if each of the resource people could, give their opinion on this. Meera, ma'am? If we could start with you.
Well, the problem is not unique. I have to say that. This is probably, I just heard what my colleagues from the States were talking about. And it's not new here either. This is probably one of the most lowest paid professions. And when I talk to people in the profession, the answer that I get back from them is, we're in here not for the money. Okay, we're in here because we love the work that we do. I recently just completed a study on well-being of early childhood practitioners in Ireland. And one of the key things that's come through in that study is the wages and the rewards that early childhood practitioners get is directly related to their well-being. So they're emotionally exhausted. At the end of the day, they're emotionally exhausted. They put in all their resources there. And if we can increase the reward, if there's some way in which we can give them better wages, we would be in a better position. Now, having said that, I don't want to keep it at a theoretical level. The programs on the ground, like Early Childhood Ireland and SIPTU, which is a labor related organization, all the stakeholders are getting together, in order to kind of bring the voice out of the early childhood educator, to kind of express and make it evidence-based so that we can ask for a better pay. On the other side, we're also kind of looking at the qualifications of early childhood educators. So if they're graduates, then they can demand a better pay. Okay, and they can say that they're professionals. So we've got to, kind of work at this at different levels. It's not enough for us to just work at one level. It's a system. We say that our early childhood educators are not performing well, but they know it's a whole system that's there, and we possibly need to be working at all systems. And here in Ireland, we are doing it. I'm pretty actively involved with the teacher education and the teacher qualification angle of it.
Thank you so much for your
process.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Kamna, over to you.
Sure. Again, this is a pretty universal issue, as Dr. Oak just mentioned. And, but we also feel that a lot of times the salaries are also associated with the morale. When you kind of get low pay, when you are paid, just minimum wage, that kind of brings the morale down of people. And we certainly want to uplift the profession, not just the salaries, but that itself will bring up the profession. And that is our goal here in the United States. So one of the things that we are talking about is, how do you empower the early childhood educators? Because I need to feel empowered in my field. In fact, we are going to be doing a webinar. The Source for Learning is going to be doing a webinar on empowering early childhood educators educators, which also will highlight the P2P initiative next month. It's exactly a month from today. So I would encourage people to join that too, because the more when you hear things like that, and you know what Dr. Sonawat also just mentioned about this new policy that is going to be, that's planned and maybe hopefully it will get implemented in India. I mean, that's incredible. These are the things that needs to keep us motivated. Yes, the salary is important. We do need to make money in order to sustain ourselves, but these are the things we need to look forward to. What's coming our way and what can we be part of? Because that's more, because we all have a stake in this. So we all need to be involved in this, not at the children level, not at the program level, not just planning our own curriculum, but how do I participate in making a difference for the field in general?
Thank you, Kamna. That's really nice. Yes,
And I'd
Dr.
like to-
Wilson.
Yes, salaries are important, and we need the government to be involved in helping to make those salaries livable wages for teachers. Many countries support their early care programs with government funds, and the United States does not do that, other than a few grants at the federal and state levels. So, and most of those grants aren't for teacher salaries. They're to help programs, to help families, children, with giving them more opportunities. So it's really important that we have lobbyists in Washington, D.C. at the federal government level that are working on these sorts of things.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Ma'am, over to you, Dr. Sonawat.
Yeah, my understanding here is most of the teachers, those who are working in the early education sector, if you see the qualification of teachers, they are not rightly qualified, I can say. Even I've seen when Kingfisher Airlines was not working because they were having good communication skills, they were like trained, groomed very well. So they were employed in early years sector. So with a very small 3 months training or maybe 6 month training. So if you see their qualification and their knowledge, which is there, that if you see, and then salary if you see, it is a definitely matter of question. So most of the teachers, they are working for the psychic satisfaction in this sector. And those who are graduates and postgraduates, if you see, most of the postgraduates, they are employed itself in a higher level. They are either employed in the corporate house as a manager, or they are employed as a coordinator or a center head. So always their employment raises if the qualification raises. So that is another thing. Third is, I've done the research on the retention of teachers. And I've found out from what is the reason. So there was one parameter was the salary. And you'll be surprised to know very few people have said salary is the reason for them to like change the job. But mostly they have changed the job because in a job, they were not getting professional development. So preschool teachers, they see that they should be professionally developed. They should be getting training. So salary is one aspect, but they want to develop in this sector much more. So they are in an organization happily working with a low salary because that organization is developing them professionally. So they see a very different perspective.
Thank you so much, ma'am. There is one more question for you. Presently, online education for preschool to second grade in state board schools is yet to commence. Are there any standardized online time frames to educate this group who is participating in this webinar?
For the preschool, right now, the timing was given is 1 hour, it is said. But my argument was there that time also, and I have written a lot in this area. What I'm saying, why can't we have a blended approach? So all the time, child doesn't have to sit in front of the screen. But the activity which is given to the child, some experiments is given to the child. Maybe the activity is where the role play corner parents have to set up, and let the children, they do the role play there. So we need to have a blended approach where the screen time, where the stories and rhymes can be part of the screen, but later on some activities, maybe some science experiment if the child is doing. So let them do away from the screen and do the experiments. So need to engage the children. That is more important. So I personally feel this time, which is allotted by WHO also, and by Government of India, is also 1 hour for the preschool. So I will say 1 hour. If you see screen time 1 hour, then it is much more. But if a blended approach, if you take, then you can have easily 2 hours. You can run the show with the. That is what I feel.
Okay, a big thank you to each of the resource persons for handling those questions. We are done with questions. Also, we need to wind up. That is why we are stopping right here. You can send more questions on the Telegram group, and we will try to get them answered by the resource people. Before I would like to wind up and hand over to Dr. Ritu Bhatia for the vote of thanks, I would like to mention about our technical partners, the Mukta Association, who have helped us in conducting this webinar on such a large scale, and whatever issues we have had, they have helped us with us. I would like to call one of the representatives from Mukta Association to please come and give an introduction about their organization and what they are doing, because this was not done at the beginning of the webinar. I'm so sorry for that. Sir, if somebody could come from Mukta Association and introduce yourselves, please. Okay, can we proceed with the vote of thanks and then we can come back?
Okay, thank you, Shobha. Now we move to the concluding part of the webinar. I take this opportunity to propose the formal vote of thanks to all the people involved in the webinar. On behalf of Human Development Department of Srimati P.N. Joshi Women's College, we express sincere thanks first to all the speakers, our wonderful people joined us for this webinar, for accepting our invitation and taking out time from their busy schedule for this webinar. Our first speaker, Dr. Meera O. Ma'am, she talked about reflective practices in early childhood education and care. Second session was conducted by Ms. Kamna Seth and Mr. Reese Wilson. They spoke on the challenges and emerging trends in early childhood education field from the USA perspective. The third speaker is Dr. Rita Sonawat. She spoke about the NEP, National Education Policy 2020, and she was the perspective on the challenges in implementation of NEP. Thank you, all of you, for joining us and sharing your views on different topics. In fact, I should tell you that we are getting positive comments in the chat box for all of you, and people were so happy to listen to. Thank you, all of you, once again. Next, we are thankful to Ms. Meena Ben Khetani, Madam, our Honorable Trustee of SPRJ Kanashala Trust, for her support for all the activities we conduct for our students and college. In fact, Madam is always welcoming new ideas and initiatives from staff members. We are extremely grateful to you, Meena Ma'am, for your encouragement. We are thankful next to the director of our college, S. Kumudavali, Ma'am, HD expert herself, for her constant encouragement and support to conduct any program we would like to conduct. We express our sincere thanks to our principal, Madam Dr. Asha Menon, again the HD expert, for her guidance and help at each step of this webinar. And many more. We conducted many things under the guidance of Dr. Asha Menon. And with this time, this is the first international program we are conducting for SPNG College. We are grateful to you, ma'am, for your help and support. Next, we are also grateful to our Vice Principal, ma'am, Dr. Rekha Ranjive. She is the Vice Principal of Home Science, for her help during this webinar and all the program we conduct for the Home Science faculty. We are thankful to the Mukta, which is Mumbai University and College Teachers Association, for giving us a platform and for their coordination and help to make this webinar a success. We are Extremely thankful to Ms. Hashmat Khan for her prompt technical help whenever we ask for. In fact, in last but not least, we are extremely grateful and happy to acknowledge the presence of all the participants who have joined from different parts of India and from abroad. We look forward to all of you to see you again in our future webinars and programs. Thank you all once again for joining us. I conclude here. Be safe, be happy, be healthy always. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.